Look, I'd love to let you fly around the garage all day, but I've got a video to make. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Antimatter Skunkworks Edition. If any of you actually watch this channel, you know that a few episodes ago I made this little gem. It's my Art Deco style Bluetooth speaker. I thought I might give it away as a gift or maybe even try and sell it, but my wife and I fell in love with it, and now I use it all the time actually. Just got done using it. Well, I may have created a situation, and you may have found yourself in this situation yourself, where maybe you have a friend and he shows you something out of excitement, maybe a little bit of pride, and you don't want to hurt his feelings, so you're all like, oh yeah, that's great, 2 thumbs up, dude, seriously, wish I had one. And then the next thing you know, he gets you one. And then you're like, why didn't I just tell the truth? Well, I show this little guy to pretty much everybody who will look at it because I really like it, in case you hadn't noticed. And I had a couple of friends that oohed and awed just a tad bit too much, so now they're getting one. But I'm not going to make just the same one because that wouldn't be very fun, plus I want mine to be unique. Plus they don't even really use Bluetooth speakers. They use smart speakers. If you don't know what a smart speaker is, that's the one where you call out a name, which I won't call out of, just for your sake, in case you have one. I'll use another name, like Bezos. Let's use Bezos. So you just say something like, hey Bezos, buy yourself another door handle for your spacecraft. And then it goes off and does it. That's like a smart speaker. Amazon has them, Google has them. So I'm going to make them one of those. But then that left a question. What kind of Art Deco speaker would I make him? But to get some ideas, I need to look at some pictures. And I have more pictures of Art Deco speakers than anybody in the world. And I keep it in a very special place, on the internet. So that's where I went to get some ideas for what I might make them. And what I actually found was this little gem, which is a copy of, kind of a copy anyway, of an old Addison Catalan radio. Now the originals look a little something like this, which as you can see is a little bit more plasticky. I think plastics were just coming to their own at the time, and it was actually kind of a status symbol almost to have something with the newfangled material in them. Now they look a little bit like McDonald's made them, especially this one. Anyway, I liked this other version that I saw and decided that that was the one I wanted to make. Now, I don't feel qualified or skilled enough to make an actual replica, so I have made my own interpretation of it, and let me show you how I did it. I started by drawing it up, both in 3D and in 2D, so that I could then mill it on my CNC router. Okay, in order to fit more pieces on here, I want to flip them over, and so that, so they fit better, basically. And that means I'm going to have to reset my 0 point. So, oh, hey little buddies. What's going on? Oh, you guys want to help? No, no problem. Just hold that knife over there as a reference point for me so I can reset the 0. Okay guys, that's pretty good. Let's just hold it right there, and I'll make my adjustments. Because I'm the world's second worst programmer, I decided to immediately jump into the electronics and the software development before going any further with the mechanical stuff. I knew it was going to give me problems, and sure enough, it did. At one point, the servo motor, which was used to indicate what mode it was in, and of course the LEDs themselves, just went berserk and started blinking randomly, and the servo was jumping around on my desk, and it took me a while to figure out what was going on, and it turned out that I had a dirty power supply. So that meant that the software saw a certain value, and then when the power supply would jump or something like that, the software saw that jump and interpreted it as a different mode. So the servo would have to move to indicate the new mode, and the lights would blink differently because it was a different mode, and then, oh, it jumped back again, and it was all over the place. So, in fact, this actually happened pretty much for all 11 programming modes. With the programming and the electronics all done and looking great on my desktop, I finally could go back to the mechanical design. And one of the things I had to do was, as I'm showing here in the picture, was figure out how to get that nice curve on the bottom of the vertical grill pieces. I couldn't do it by hand because it would look horrible. So I had to come up with this fixture. It's sacrificial, so it's only used once, and I had to be really careful because if I took some kind of a chip out of one of the grill pieces or cut into it anyway that was improper, I would have had to make not only new grill pieces but a new sacrificial template to then go and make this cut again. And I was concerned, you can see right here, that I had turned beyond 90 degrees and had the bit come back around and almost cut like a circle out of the grill pieces instead of just cutting them off at the bottom. But fortunately, I had a little extra meat on either side, and you can see here when I'm taking it out that it came out right, and I cannot tell you how happy I was that that was the case. After successfully cutting out the vertical grills, I had to repeat that entire process for the horizontal grills. Then it was into the Media Blaster to give them that frosted look. At this point, I had to put some of the parts together and see how things were starting to look. As you can see, it's starting to look like an actual Art Deco speaker now. Then I went on and started playing with some of the LED lighting, trying to come up with a plan for how I was going to light these things from behind. It was not coming out the way I wanted. Each and every grill piece was supposed to glow evenly, but instead what I got were these little dots of light, and unfortunately in the end I decided it would be a complete redesign to try and fix that, and I was going to have to live with it the way it was. Once I'd figured out the how the LEDs were going to go to my dissatisfaction, I moved on to the next step, which was milling the gauge section of the Bluetooth speaker. Fortunately, this gave me no problems whatsoever. Well, except that actually I reversed the image and had to do it twice. When I started this project, the latest version of the Echo Dot was version 3. But as the project dragged on a bit, Amazon came out with the Echo Dot 4. So I thought, well, since this is a new product, I should probably give them the latest version. But when I looked at that version, I found that it was completely different in shape. It was no longer hockey puck shaped, but rather spherical. So until I could take it apart and see, I didn't know if it was even going to fit in the unit. But even if it did, the buttons weren't going to be in the same location as the 3, and I didn't really want to spend the extra money anyway, so I decided, though, in order to future-proof this thing, I would have to take my 100% completed top and butcher it up to create a panel that could be adapted to and inserted. You know, a new panel could be made and inserted in place of the old one, and that's what I'm doing here. It was about this time that I realized I was not going to make my December of 2020 time deadline, so I put this project on the back burner and didn't touch it for several months. When December of 2021 started coming closer, I realized I was going to need to get started back up on this project so that I could give it to them for the following Christmas. And as usual, I forgot everything I had done. But I knew I was roughly at the spot where I needed to figure out how the LEDs were going to be arranged, and I started putting together a few options in software, as you can see here. And eventually I think I came up with a solution to my problem. One of the problems was that internally there were things in the way, so I couldn't put the LEDs exactly where I wanted them. And because it didn't light a single LED, or 2 LEDs wasn't going to light the entire grill section like I wanted it to, I thought, well, what I could do is just line each grill section with a whole boatload of LEDs. That'll do the trick, right? But then it would have required more LEDs than the power supply could handle. It was going to draw a lot of current, and it just wasn't going to work that way either. So eventually I came up with a sort of compromise, I want to say. And I made a template, you can see right here, that puts all of the the holes. I could use this template to drill the holes through the front panel, actually all the panels. to mount the LEDs in exactly the right location. I started drilling the holes using my template, as you see here, and I encountered two problems. The first was I managed to miss a hole. The first pilot hole was supposed to capture the bit and keep it straight, and in this case, just due to the nature of the material, it gets this sort of furriness and stuff to it, and it had a little anthill, if you will, and it kind of just slipped off and went wrong. And then also this happened. Well, this is pretty typical too. Suddenly I started smelling smoke as I was drilling, and turns out the startup capacitor on the drill press went. Well, this took a little while, but on the lathe I made these HSV knobs, and yeah, so you can see if it's on there. I just have to tap a hole in there to use as a set screw. But I think I like this little detail I put on the top. I think it looks pretty cool. And I gave it a little bit of a detail on the side as well, just something that feels a little different. So anyway, I'm pretty happy with those. Now I just got to make the big one. But of course, as usual, I had a problem. I had a drill bit break off in there, and I kept trying to get it out and I couldn't. It kept breaking more, and I wound up having to waste a whole part, and so I had to make 4 and throw one away. Well, I was debating whether I should make the larger knob longer as well, and I think I made the right decision. I like it this way. It'll be easier to grab because this has some resistance in it, whereas these are really smooth. So anyway, I think that's looking pretty good. I put a set screw in there to hold it onto the shaft, and I'll probably grind a little flat into the shaft for the set screw to bite into. That should hold them on. I was just partially putting together to see how this works out. It's starting to come together. What I really like though, this has to be fixed, it's got to go on more, but I just think that looks so cool. I'm getting so stoked about this. Got a bunch of little challenges to go yet, but yeah, it's coming out pretty good. Alright, I'm doing something dangerous here. In order to make the needle, I need to make a cut across here, and I'd like it to be in the center and straight. Something I couldn't do with, say, a Dremel tool or angle grinder. So I'm using my lathe as a mill. I'm going to put the bit in this side, an end mill. It's brand new. And I've mounted my part into the slide so I can move it sideways. To do that, I had to use a piece of scrap aluminum and find the center line, so I actually cut using the bit into this, and then I put my hole in the center of that, and I pushed this, it's like basically the shape of a mushroom right now, and I've pushed it in. And now I'm going to try and cut across, and if everything goes wrong, then the part is wasted. But this is the first time I've ever done this, and it's not fun, really, because you don't get a feel for pressure when you're pushing this that way, and so you just have to take it super, super slow, and it's really hard to see this bit spinning because it's fluted, or it's got like an angle cut on it. It's not a flat end mill, so yeah, oh well, it's got a bit of a sphincter factor, but here we go. Well, that didn't go quite as expected. You can see the line doesn't quite look straight. So this is the wiring, and everything's all coming out better. This cradle's almost done. The servo's not in place yet, but I'm working on that, and I'll have to shave down the shaft, but it's just taking so long. Everything takes so long. I made buttons for the top. You can see them here. This one's upside down. They're the smaller ones. But now that I see that, I kind of like it better big. But, oh well, I'm not doing this again. This is too much work. But I made new buttons because the first buttons I made didn't quite work for me. I couldn't center them on the Echo Dot. I made them smaller so that I would have a little room to line things up from this top over the top of that top. But I just couldn't do it. I couldn't position it. When one button pressed, another one wouldn't, because I guess it was off to the side or something. So what I decided I had to do was give the bottom of the button a little taper so that this area is now much smaller, so I can I can miss by more and still press the button, and that seemed to work. It's starting to shape up here now. I have this back piece here that holds the power in. That can come out. It attaches down inside there. And then this is the height and the, more or less the direction that the servo needs to go. And that's created by this little cradle here, which bolts down to there. And then all these wires will come up and attach. I'll make a little loop to hold it. This is what the Amazon Echo Dot 3 looks like once it's disassembled. And I just tapped into it to get the speaker wires out. I'm not going to show you how I disassembled it because there are lots of videos like that online. Alright, I've made quite a bit more progress here. It feels good to do something and then like mark it off the list, you know, even though I still feel pretty far from assembling this thing, painting it. This is just temporary. Everything's just temporary. It all comes back apart because I have to plug things in, like this goes into there and so forth. I still have to locate this guy and this guy. I have to sand this off in the back. What I did just now was I'm putting the holes in for the LEDs that are on the top and on the sides. I've got, well, I haven't put the hole in yet, but I made this allowance for the LEDs. And I use the same template on the top as right here as I did for the front. Right there. And I made myself a list of things to do down there and over there, and I'm checking them off. And here I am doing some assembly crap. So I finished the needle. It's a little crooked. I gotta straighten it out. I came up with the perfect solution. I've attached it with a magnet. Check it out. That's so great because I can get to the screw underneath. It covers it up, but it holds it on plenty strong enough. It's very secure. There's no real stress on that anyway. It's upside down. All right. So this is the moment of truth. Obviously, it's not done, but I think all the electronics are done, which means now I got to plug it in and see if, one, it explodes, and two, if I ruined anything, along the way. Nothing. All right, maybe in the off mode. Wow. That's about as nothing as you can get. Well, that's not good. Alright, so I figured out what was going wrong. The capacitor was shorting out somewhere, and I don't know if it survived that. But I saw some activity, so let's see what happens now. Alright, I may be in the off mode, so let's see. No, when I had it out of the box, the lights started lighting, so I don't know why when I put it back in, I thought it was this capacitor down here. I guess I'm going to have to look at it again. Okay, so I must have shorted something out on the LEDs because as you can see, there's red there now, and I can actually adjust the colors right through the spectrum. No problem. But as soon as I plug in the rest of the LEDs, then I start hearing a humming noise and it doesn't work. Alright, I apologize, the hot water heater is making noise again, but you'll have to live with it. So I have finally gotten, after hours of destroying some LEDs and I don't know, working backward and not figuring out really what was going on, I finally got, I believe, all of them working. It was last time anyway, so let's see what it looks like now. Alright, so if I switch to the first mode, everything should be one color. And as you can see, all of them are there. 2 in here. Hopefully you can see a little light coming from that onto my hand there. So that's zone 1. I think I had that as zone 3 earlier, but it's zone 1 now. And then it goes into these 8, and then over into these 8, which you can see are also lit. And then through the ones on the side. So these two 8s are for the vertical, and the rest are all for the horizontals, and you can see every LED is lit, which is nice. And there's the unit glued together. Now I'm just going to need to go around it and put some filler and sand it flat. I'll take these pieces off. And right next to it is the paint I'm going to use. This is gloss black car paint, single stage. So I'm going to paint that up a few times. Now, if you don't know anything about painting MDF, you can't really just paint it. It just sucks it in and keeps going, and you'll see the grain, and it's just horrible. It doesn't work. Yeah, what you have to do is coat it in something. There are many things you can use. You can use there's something basically called some kind of a prep, I want to say, some wood prep or something like that. There's a shellac, which is what I used on this one. There is a polyurethane spray, and I have a bunch of that from another project, so I think I'm going to wind up using that. And to test it, just to make sure everything's going to work right, I'll probably take a piece of this leftover stuff and do several before I go and actually spray the paint on with my gun, because I want it to look good. I want to make sure it's going to be right. Whilst the paint is drying, and I'd like to point out that I used the word whilst. It's a $50 word. I have to correct another little error I made. On the top, I filled in these little slots with epoxy. I really should have done that after I painted it. Really should have done that after I painted it, because now I don't know how to paint over it. So now what I'm going to do is use an X-Acto blade and try and make as nice of a mask as I can, so that I can put these in the grooves and paint, and hopefully it will look okay. This is starting to shape up quite nicely now. It's getting real smooth. I've put many layers of primer on it. It's called a filler primer. I found this one. I wanted to get more because I didn't have enough to do. I'd put some on and then I would sand it off, and I'd go through and I'd have to add more again, and it's happened so many times that I was starting to run out. So I went back to get some more, and I found this one that said 2-in-1 filler and sandable, and I thought, really, this isn't sandable? I mean, I thought all primers were sandable, right? So probably the same product, 2 different cans, right? But I can say, actually, this one, I like it better. It does seem to sand better than this one does. So I'm kind of glad I went in that order then, because that leaves this one on the top for sanding. And I've been doing that. I think I put on what I hope is going to be my last coat, and I have not sanded it yet. So because I can still see, ideally I'd like this super smooth. Frankly, I'm not an artist. I've said this 1,000 times, and this is already better than I had expected. So if I went no further, I'd already be pretty happy with it. But I haven't sanded this one yet, and I did the previous with 220. So I used 150 to get any of the big blemishes out, and then I went with 220, and it got pretty smooth, and now I've painted it after that again. Now I'm going to do the scary part. I'm going to wet sand it with 400, and then again with 600 to get a nice smooth finish ready to go for the actual car paint. And I'm afraid to do that because MDF has the structural integrity of a graham cracker when it gets wet. I have put coats of polyurethane clear, several coats. I put several coats of this on it. There's some wood putty in certain areas, so I've done my best to essentially waterproof this thing, but I intend to use the minimum amount just in case it gets in any little crack where I haven't painted, I haven't waterproofed it, and yeah, and we'll see how that goes. So I'm a little bit scared about that right now. One of the things I can say is if you use any of this high build primer is it gets furry. It gets, if you look in here, all this that you see that's, I know that the camera probably isn't, I think I can zoom out, there we go. You may not be able to tell, it just may look discolored on the camera, but all that discoloration is literally like fur. This is very, very rough. That's, I guess, how it builds up sort of unevenly. I don't know that I care that much on the inside because, you don't look at the inside, but I probably will sand it just so things are a little bit smoother. But it's amazing here from the side, maybe you can see how furry, literally just furry. But because I've sanded the outside, you can see how nice and smooth that is, right? Alright, so important safety tip for anybody doing this. While it's okay to coat MDF and then prime it and wet sand it, you absolutely positively have to make sure that everything is sealed so that the water doesn't get inside like it did here. I wish I had filmed this beforehand. This was really bad right here, but you can still see, I think, I'm just going to move the camera around a little bit so you can kind of get an idea of how that swelling is taking place. And I'm pretty sure it's because what I used wood putty to seal that, and I probably didn't get paint down in there enough. Any of the paints I used to seal it, water got in there and it just swelled up the material, and actually you can see it anywhere I put it there. There's even a little tiny one here, fortunately not too bad. But my solution is to use something more waterproof, so I'm taking this down below the surface. I'm going to put epoxy on there and try and level it as best I can, and then let it dry and sort of repeat the process in this area here. Okay, it looks like my plan to use the epoxy as a filler is actually working. So now, and you can see that I've got a lot more sanding to do, and I'm even going through in a couple spots, but I think once I get there, I'll just, have to recoat, of course. But now I need to fix this part here where I messed it all up, and I'll have to put in the grills to see how much gap there is there, and then fill it in, figure out a way to fill it in with epoxy. Well, my friends arrive tomorrow, and the unit is not painted, or is it assembled? I couldn't do the painting because I'm trying to hold the camera steady here because it got very cold in Florida. A cold front came through, and it got very windy, and I cannot paint. Now, fortunately, my friends are taking a side trip while they're here, and I'll paint it while they're gone, and polish it up and assemble it, hopefully. Hopefully that'll work. But in the meantime, I was doing as much as I could, and what I noticed when I put this all together and plugged it in was when I turned the knob to the right, the needle actually went to the left. It was completely backwards, so I had to go in and to the software and basically reverse my angles and stuff. So a few days have passed, and my friends are gone. They'll be back in a week or so as they visit other people while they're here in the U.S. And the conditions are perfect for painting now. It's about 70 degrees, maybe even a little bit warmer. It's supposed to get up to like 73, I think. I've blown the leaves off of my driveway, so that hopefully they don't blow into the paint. Well, my recycle bin finally found a mate, but she's a little bit trashy. Well, this is kind of what it looks like in white. It's pretty cool. Obviously it looks better when it's all assembled, but soon it will be black.
Have you any idea why?
So I can't remember if I showed it in black yet. It's looking really, really beautiful. But if I get it at the right angle with the sun coming off of it, you can see got a really big one right here, a little big burger, and then a couple more there. For some reason, the front took the brunt of the damage, even though it was mostly vertical. The sides look really good. Both sides look really good. So that should be easy, and the top actually looks pretty good too. Yeah, but it doesn't have that shine that I'm looking for, so 800 grit sandpaper. I was thinking about going 600, but I decided, you know, let's be careful. Let's just take a little longer. Go with 800, then 1,000, then I think 1,500, then compound, then polish. Hopefully, it'll look like glass. But let's see. Okay, here it is, all sanded down. You can see it's gotten quite dull, right? But you can see also I didn't do that great of a job of these, and I decided not to because they really are hard to see once the grill pieces are in there, and it was just so easy with these edges. I several times went through and exposed the primer. Well, like I said, sun is going down, but there is the after compound shot, and there it is after polish. To be honest, I've never really noticed much difference between polishing and compounding, but theoretically this is a lot smoother. I can tell you it feels like glass, but I do see a lot in the right light of sort of texture in it that I'm not happy with. But when you step back, kind of looks like a piano, and I'm happy with that. Well, the day has finally come where I'm assembling the whole unit. I've pretty much got the layout done for all of the LEDs. I've even potted a couple of them that were visible. Some are just held in place by supports. Now it's time to choose a guy. I've got all these little miniatures to choose from. I went ahead and let my wife decide, and she decided on this white guy over here. So I don't know what he's doing, but he's doing a great job at it. Everything else is ready to go. I think I'm ready to finally slide this thing in for the last time. And that can be a problem because every time I slide it in, I break one of these things off down here. And, well, there are only 3 and I've broken 2 of them. I had to glue them back on. I also drove one of the screws in to mount the speaker, came through and cracked this one, but I don't think it's going to be visible when it's all assembled. So that's finally it. Last few weeks that I was working on this, it fought me every step of the way, including when I was 100% done with it and we just had it on the table enjoying it. One of the LEDs went out, and it's over here on the side is one of the hardest ones to get to, and I literally had to disassemble the entire unit to replace those, and I'm always afraid when I do that I'm going to break 3 things trying to fix the one. So as you probably already know, there's an Echo Dot unit up in here. I'm not going to say the A word because I don't want to set off yours if you have one, but it's completely autonomous from this. It would have been nice to tie that in, but that's kind of beyond me, or at least in the time frame. So I'll just show you through all of the modes and how they work. So currently it's in 0 mode, which means the lighting is off. If you go to mode 1, then all of the lights are one color, and right now I think they must be kind of low. There we go, I'll turn it up. So it's a HSV. So this is hue, saturation, and value. Value basically being the intensity. So H for hue is the color, so red in this case, and the S is the saturation, means it's fully red. If I turn the saturation down, it goes through shades of red, going down basically to pink, and if you turn it all the way down, you get white, which on the black looks really cool. Actually, they all look really cool, right? And then, of course, the value is dimming it down. If you go all the way to 0, it's essentially off again. So there's a danger that if you do that, you may not realize it's actually functioning properly because you just turn the knob all the way. And there's a reason to turn that knob all the way. And I'll show you that when I get to the other modes. So as you can see, the whole thing essentially one color, right? So go back to red. Mode 2 is adjusts zone 1. This is zone 1. And so what you can do is you can adjust whatever you want, and if that's the color you want, then you can leave it that way. But you'll know if I go to the next zone, which is mode 3, you'll see this switches to red. And that's because it doesn't know really what to do. So when you're adjusting zone 1, if you get it to something you like green, you have to hit the memory button. Now it knows to display it as green. And when I go to the next mode to adjust this one, you can see it's green now. And of course that's green because it's where the knobs are. So let's say I want to go to like orange, and I want that one to stay orange. I hit the memory, and then I go to the horizontal ones, and I can just adjust to whatever color I want there. Let's call it like a purple, and hit the memory mode. And I could leave it like that and it would be fine, but if I ever turned a knob like that, then it'll be off. But if I go to the next one, it displays only what's in memory, which is what I had saved earlier. And that's the only thing that memory button does. So then you can go to the next mode, which is 6. And 6 is what I call a spectrum mode. It goes through the spectrum. You can see it's red, but if you watch as I talk here, it should go to orange, and then yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, which is interesting tidbit here is you can remember the color spectrum in order by remembering a person's name. It's Roy G. Biv. So I learned that in college. So Roy is red, orange, yellow, and then G is green, and then BIV, blue, indigo, violet, is the Biv, of course. So as you can see, it's going through orange. And you can change the speed at which it goes through this by adjusting one of the knobs that isn't being used. And I don't remember, but that's okay because down here, there's a little cheat sheet you can use. I'm in mode 6. I can go to mode 6, and it says that the brightness is V and the speed is H. So H is this one, and faster is actually anti-clockwise, which is odd, but what it does is it shortens the interval, which would make it faster, right? So if I turn all the way down, you can see it goes through the spectrum very quickly. It's a very rough control. If you even go halfway, you kind of can't see it. But I did that on purpose, actually, because I thought if it was sitting in the corner, you're just going about your day and it's just there, you may not want to see it pulsing. You may want it to just slowly change colors. So anyway, you have control over that, and you can do what you want with that. So then the next mode, 7, it's a little problematic when I flip to 7. Oops, let me see. I flip to 7, it takes a second, and then it goes. I do not know why. I went into the software and I looked, and that portion of the code is identical for each mode, and I don't know why it would do that, but it does. And so mode 7 is chaser mode. So you may not have seen it, but it starts here and then goes there, and then here, 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 and it's moving through the vertical, and it'll move through the vertical, and then it'll start moving through the horizontals and all the way around. And the cool thing is you can adjust the speed at which it does that by, again, adjusting the V knob down to a shorter interval, so faster. And what you can get is you have to go pretty much all the way. There we go. It's super fast, right? And then you can just have whatever you want. And this mode turned out to be one of my favorites. I think that just looks really cool. And of course you can adjust the color with the hue. There's purple running around. So the next mode, 8. 8. What does 8 do? I don't remember. I gotta look at this again. So 8 is a random blink. So yeah, you can see it just randomly blinking all over the place. So I'm going to turn the intensity up so you can see it. And of course the color won't do anything now because it's randomly selecting the color. So you can see it just kind of blinks all over the place. And then I can go to mode 9, which is fill. So randomly selects a number between 1 and 40. There are 40 LEDs in this thing, and you can see it wants to light each one of them. And what happened was there's nothing really random in code. It's always sort of pseudo-random. When you do pseudo-random, that means sometimes it picks the same pixel more than once, in which case it just changes the color of the pixel. I didn't want to wait so long that it took forever for the random number to hit all 40. So after 14 seconds, it starts all over like you just saw it, and then it starts to fill them all in again. So then we go to 10, which is what I call twinkle mode. There aren't really any controls on this, I don't believe. I can take a look again. 10, twinkle, just the brightness. Oh yeah, I almost always leave a brightness, just in case you want a really subtle effect. You can turn it really low if it's in your face. So that's twinkle mode. I think that one actually looks pretty cool. And then finally, dance mode. And what happens is, let me turn up. It reacts to sound. Now you see it didn't react very well, but the truth is, the microphone's actually internal to the unit. And when I had it on my workbench and I was seeing how it worked, it looked great playing music. But when I put it in the box and the microphone was much closer to the source, what happened is it just essentially maxed it out, and it just basically blinked at a constant rate. It didn't look like it was really dancing to the music. So I couldn't really do much about that except try and move the microphone further away, but I had already set everything up and I wasn't going to do it. So when you can see it responds to vibration a lot more. So when I was in it last time, I put a piece of tape over it to hopefully desensitize it. Now with the kind of music I listen to, that's what it does. It just kind of blinks continuously and it doesn't really look like it's dancing. But to classical music, and I believe I can do that without a copyright strike, it's a little bit better. And to talking and to the vibrations, right? Let's see what happens. I'm not sure if it's on or not. Oh, I'll mute out me saying it. So, play Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. Play Beethoven's Ninth Sixth Symphony.
Beethoven, Overture Leonore No. 3, Symphony No. 6 by Ludwig van Beethoven, on Amazon Music.
So you can see what I mean. It just looks like it's blinking, and that's it. It was so much better. I thought the dance mode was a little silly when I was designing it. Stop music. But as I had the string out on my workbench, it started to become my favorite mode. I'm a little disappointed to say that now that it's reacting this way, it's not necessarily my favorite mode. It's more of a epileptic seizure mode, right? So that's it. This has been really long, especially this last segment. But I want to try and turn the lights off and see what it looks like in the dark. I don't know how that's coming through, but here it's absolutely brilliant. I'm looking at the little screen on the camera and it just looks really washed out. But in person, this is super bright. All these colors are like super rainbowy bright, like just really, really brilliant. This unit is probably the best thing I've ever made. Anyway, that's it from Antimatter Skunkworks. Thank you for watching.